memory scenes to the stories that last forever. Love letters to history we remember eternally.
Every year we celebrate the 4th of July. We have flags, fireworks, barbecues, Joey Chestnut grossly defeating everyone in the annual hot dog eating contest. Don't forget that.
And a group of powder-wig revolutionaries we call the Founding Fathers. But here's the thing, they weren't marble statues, they were people, people who argued constantly.
They even fell in love and made plenty of mistakes. Rumors were spread even back in the 18th century, and occasionally they found themselves at the center of scandal.
Today we're celebrating America's 250th birthday by meeting the humans behind the history, the men who helped create a nation with some help from a few ladies, while proving that even founders can be delightfully complicated.
Welcome to our very first episode of Love Letters to History, where two lifelong friends revisit the stories we love, admire, and still have a million questions about, usually with a drink in hand. And since history started a minute ago, we have lots to talk about.
I'm Emily, history nerd, master's degree holder, and I will absolutely bring the facts and the tea to every episode. I can be slightly unhinged at times, but I could talk about this all day, every day.
And that's why we're such good friends, got opposites attract. And I'm Liz, here for the storytelling, the reactions, and asking the questions you might be yelling right now. Like, how did anyone survive this? And believe me, I ask that a lot. In a nutshell, I will bring you the calm and inquisition.
A little history about our show. A couple years ago, I made a Facebook post joking how I wanted to be a podcast sensation and asked for a co host. Elizabeth raised her hand, but I just laughed it off.
And earlier this year, I actually told Emily, hey, let's actually do this. I mean, it just took 3 years. Um, and Emily shared an idea she had had, which became the title of our show. And
We made it a reality.
we did. And I am so glad we decided to do this for real. We're having so much fun and we're learning a lot of new things like technology, things we never needed to know. So this is not our 9 to 5. This is our side gig,
In every episode, we will present some facts, some juicy gossip or scandals,
AKA the tea.
uh-huh, and share some related pop culture items. We will always end each episode with a love letter to whomever or whatever subject we cover. So let's get started.
Since America is celebrating its semi quincentennial birthday, we thought there was no better place to begin than with the people who launched the experiment, the founders who helped create our nation, the United States, and who occasionally behaved like very talented but very dramatic man children, like Patrick Henry famously declaring in 1775,
Give me liberty or give me death.
"Ah."
We will also pair each episode with a fun cocktail.
Today's cocktail is colonial rum punch, rum paired with simple syrup or grenadine, as well as some citrus like lime, pineapple, or orange juice, whatever is your taste. To quote founder John Jay, pure democracy, like pure rum, easily produces intoxication and with it 1,000 mad pranks and foolery.
Sips for democracy. Rum was one of the most popular drinks in colonial America, which means there's a decent chance some revolutionary ideas were created in a tavern near a lantern, writing on a napkin with a quill, while indulging in this very same spirit.
The tavern was often the social media platform of the 18th century, except instead of posting angry comments online, people simply argued face to face. And honestly, that sounds utterly terrifying these days.
Duel anyone? Well, obviously, we begin with George Washington, the father of the country, commander of the Continental Army, leader of the Revolution, and America's first president. But perhaps his greatest accomplishment was something that he didn't do.
He refused to become king.
That's right, Liz. During a time when most nations expected powerful military leaders to seize control, Washington voluntarily stepped away from power after leading the Continental Army. It wasn't until about 6 years later that he became the first president of the United States.
By the way, he turned down a third term. Now, if only Congress would follow his lead.
Amen.
Thank you. That decision helped establish the peaceful transfer of power that remains one of America's defining cornerstones. Now, let's talk about those famous wooden teeth, right?
But they weren't actually wooden. George suffered from terrible dental problems throughout much of his life. His dentures were made from a variety of materials, including ivory, metal, and either other people's human teeth.
Which somehow sounds worse than wood, right? His portraits were often painted carefully and expressionless, just like the Mona Lisa, because he was self conscious about his appearance and freakishly tall for the times. Estimates say at least 6'2", while the average man was 5'6" ish. Not to mention, he was probably in constant pain. So, America's most famous leader spent years worrying about his smile, which feels surprisingly relatable. Maybe there were no filters like we have today, but you could at least tell your local painter to go easy around the mouth area.
Now, with Washington, it was hard to find any real tea on him, as he is still an icon in American history. But he somehow managed to fit in relations with a woman named Mary Gibbons late at night in disguise. She, in turn, happened to be a spy who reported all of his behavior and many, many, many other dalliances to loyalist John Clayford, who in turn tried to ruin old George's reputation. I would say it was a failure, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. We all know George was still an upstanding citizen, as legend says that he chopped down one of his father's cherry trees and copped to it because he could not tell a lie. His father said honesty was worth more than 1,000 trees. Remember, and we will say it often, history is written by the victors, and author Mason Weems wanted to plant a seed that George was loyal and honest from the very beginning. Not an actual true story, but I think this speaks to the love and respect he received. Oddly enough, George died the wealthiest president until Kennedy with his family wealth, and then obviously now President Trump. Even though George was a gambler with a spending habit, he was worth around $525 million in today's money. And his face remains emblazoned on the $1 bill and the quarter.
Next comes Thomas Jefferson, primary author of the Declaration of Independence. Don't forget the origination of Put Your John Hancock on it. Founding Father John Hancock was the first and biggest signature on the document.
Back to Jefferson, he was also the organizer of Lewis and Clark's Adventures Out West and the third president of the United States, the man responsible for the Louisiana Purchase. Since M and I are two Louisiana ladies, this man is on our radar.
Jefferson was brilliant, curious, and endlessly interested in ideas. He was also one of history's most complicated figures. Modern historians overwhelmingly agree that Jefferson fathered up to 6 children with the enslaved Sally Hemings, a subject that continues to generate important conversations about race, power, and the contradictions of early America. Jefferson also loved architecture, gardening, books, food, and wine. He once said, I cannot live without books.
And sips to that because we really can't either. He was basically the 18th century version of a lifestyle influencer, except Thomas was writing the very document that set out to define America in his free time and reminding everyone that our liberty depends on freedom of the press and that cannot be limited without being lost. Finally, don't forget that Mr. Jefferson is the face on the rare $2 bill and the nickel.
Then we arrive at Benjamin Franklin, our personal favorite eccentric founder and my OG spirit animal. I had too many interests and so little time. But Ben found the time. Printer, inventor, scientist, diplomat, 6-time multilingual, founder of the first free public library, and first volunteer fire department. Thanks, Ben. And possibly the closest thing colonial America had to a celebrity at the time. Sips.
If At just 16 years old, Ben wrote a series of essays that were published on the front page of the New England Current. He wrote under the guise of an old widow named Silence Dogood, and she had a natural inclination to observe and reprove the faults of others.
Same, Ben. Same.
Franklin became famous for his wit, charm, and ability to make friends almost everywhere he went, particularly in France. Let's just say he enjoyed female company.
But he was married, although only through a common law ceremony, to Deborah Reed for almost 50 years. But the amount of time he spent living with her in America was probably only half of the years they were together. Deb didn't like ocean travel, so the couple did not see each other in the 10 years before her death. Ben referred to her as a fortune to him, but I guess Europe's pull was stronger than her love.
However, Ben's diplomacy helped secure crucial French support during the American Revolution. There was never a good war or a bad peace. When he got bored, he also practiced something called an air bath, which involves sitting buck naked near an open window. What if it shut accidentally, or a wasp flew by, or a nail snagged him?
Ouch! And let's not forget the whole kite key lightning story, where he showed how lightning creates electricity, thus leading to the invention of the lightning rod. Some of his other inventions include bifocals and the grabber. Shorter folks owe him thanks.
Ben even managed to find time to create Poor Richard's Almanac. Not sure how he managed that too, but farmers and fishermen alike have sought advice from old Ben. History can be unexpectedly weird, yet satisfyingly useful, and Benjamin Franklin often leads that category. Cheers for being weird.
Now, John Adams, second president of the new country, was one of the strongest voices pushing for independence. And unlike many founders, his greatest partnership wasn't political. He thought, in politics, the middle way is nothing at all. And apparently, he was very cranky about that.
He clearly saw the world in black and white, but it was his marriage to Abigail that was his greatest strength. Their letters remain one of the greatest collections of correspondence in American history.
If 18th century couples had texting, these two would have worn out the server. Abigail frequently advised John on politics and government, and many consider Miss Adams to be one of the most influential women of the Revolutionary era. And we'll discuss her further when we present our First Lady series.
And P.S., I guess we could help thank John for our first president. He hired Washington as commander in chief of the Continental Army in 1775, and the rest is history.
So let's fast forward a few years, and we meet the founder who has experienced perhaps the greatest modern comeback, thanks in part to the smash hit musical Hamilton. Created by Lin-Manuel Miranda, the show introduced millions of people to Alexander Hamilton, including plenty of people who never expected to sing along to a lesson about federal banking.
Seriously, Mr. Miranda is like the goat of songwriting and composing. One of my favorite lines from the play is, "When you're gone, who remembers your name? Who keeps your flame? Who tells your story?" Well, for today, we are Sips, and if you have a $10 bill, you are in fact spreading his flame.
Hamilton served as America's first Secretary of the Treasury and helped build the nation's financial system. Congress approved his creation of the Bank of the United States to take ownership of the $40 million Revolutionary War debt and sold shares to wealthy investors. Hello, Wall Street. He once called Thomas Jefferson a contemptible hypocrite and said, "A national debt, if not excessive, would be to us a national blessing."
Seriously, Alex?
I'm no economic professor. What does that even mean, man?
I agree. I mean, I thought any debt of any amount is not a good thing. So I need him to come down and explain it to me. I wonder what he would think of today's national financial situation. He's probably tired from rolling in his grave, wouldn't you
Yep,
think?
yep.
hmm However, he was involved in America's first major political sex scandal, the Reynolds affair. I can see the 2020 episode now.
Basically, James Reynolds caught his wife Maria in bed with Hamilton. When accusations surfaced, Hamilton publicly admitted the affair in extraordinary detail after his bribes of money and jobs did not keep Mr. Reynolds quiet. Imagine responding to a sex scandal by publishing your own 95-page booklet called Observations on Certain Documents, which lists all the justified denials of bribes. Of note, Hamilton said, Reynolds was an obscure, important, and immoral man. This all supposedly started when Maria appealed to Hamilton with her blight of being a poor, unhappy wife with no money. He shows up at her door, gives her some money, and the conversation became apparent that other than pecuniary consolation would be acceptable.
Ironically, his life ultimately ended in a duel with Aaron Burr, whom was vice president of the US at that time. The argument was basically over Alexander not being able to keep Aaron's name out of his mouth.
One of my favorite things. Anybody remember that milk commercial from the 90s where the guy gets a call into a radio station to play a trivia game for $10,000, but he was eating a peanut butter sandwich? Then he learned he had nothing to drink and therefore could not say the answer Aaron Burr, and he loses the money. Thank you, pop culture, for drilling that in my head. Evan Burr.
There are more founding fathers than we have time for. But for our purposes, today's final founder never became president, never held major office, and never commanded an army. He wasn't even a natural born citizen. Yet he helped change the course of history with a little help from Ben Franklin.
That's right. Thomas Paine's pamphlet, Common Sense, became one of the most influential publications in American history. And I remember learning about it every year in school. It
Amen.
transformed independence from a radical idea into a movement. His words inspired ordinary colonists to imagine a different future. He said, the more men have to lose, less willing they are to venture.
Man, I need to write this one on my mirror for a daily affirmation.
He also warned, from the errors of other nations, let us learn wisdom. Basically saying, don't let history repeat itself. And of more worth is one honest man to society and in the sight of God than all the crowned ruffians ever lived. He sure loved that English King George III, didn't he?
Ironically, Paine spent much of his later life arguing with almost everyone because his religious views became controversial. And despite helping inspire the revolution, he died with relatively little public support, even though he previously received 300 acres of thanks from Uncle Sam. Then he turned around and gave the finger to the new nation when he joined the French Revolution. Upon his death, headlines read, he had lived long, did some good, and much harm.
A reminder that history's heroes don't always receive happy endings or die with the wealth they made in life. But inasmuch as these men made an impact, we should acknowledge that the American story wasn't shaped by the founding fathers alone.
While the original cronies were writing constitutions, fighting wars, and debating independence, women were helping shape the culture, politics, and ideals of the new nation. Historians sometimes refer to these influential women as the founding mothers. And honestly, some of them were every bit as impressive as the men we've discussed today. Aside from the following ladies of liberty, there were brave women like Deborah Sampson, who joined the army as soldier Robert Shirtliff. No one discovered her secret for 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing. Fearless Lydia Darrag's house was confiscated by the British for a headquarters in Philadelphia. She listened and passed along whatever she could learn to the first Continental soldier she could find. A clever spy indeed.
And yet, one of my favorite stories involves the genius Mary Murphy, who invited British generals to dine at her house one evening. She offered them so much alcohol that a small American army was able to sneak on by and evade capture or even death. It might not be what actually happened, but I'd like to believe she signaled the soldiers through the window that the coast was clear. Then there's someone we already mentioned, Abigail Smith Adams, but she deserves another moment in the sun.
Yes, indeed. Wife of John Adams, trusted advisor, and one of the sharpest political minds of her era. In her famous letters, she urged her husband and the Continental Congress to remember the ladies. He, in turn, wrote to her saying, "You are really brave, my dear. You are an heroine." Times are tough when you never knew when the British were going to show up at your door, but her motto was, "Danger, they say, makes people valiant," which sounds remarkably modern for 1776. She also spoke against slavery and advocated for greater opportunities for women.
There's also Esther Reed, who wrote Sentiments of an American Woman, which urged ladies to support the troops by manufacturing clothing or providing food and housing. She organized fundraisers in Philadelphia and offered the profits to General Washington, who only wanted clothes for his soldiers. So, the ladies made over 2,000 shirts and put their names on the inside of them so men on the battlefield would know their efforts were not in vain.
Another remarkable lady was Mercy Otis Warren. She was a writer, political commentator, and one of the Revolution's most influential voices. She wrote essays criticizing British policies and supporting independence. Other Americans finally began to see how King George III was not threatening or not treating the colonies fairly. And later, Mercy became one of the first historians of the American Revolution.
Have mercy on me. At a time when women rarely participated publicly in politics, Mercy Otis Warren made sure her voice was heard, and her words are cemented in history.
And then there's Dolly Madison, one of my personal favorites. As First Lady, she helped define the social culture of the new capital. But she's perhaps most famous for what happened during the War of 1812.
When British troops tried to upend Washington, she helped save important government documents and a famous portrait of George Washington. Talk about keeping your cool under pressure. Her actions helped preserve one of the greatest pieces of U.S. history for future generations. Like a summer sun, she rose in our political horizon gloriously.
Oh, I love the sound of that. Yep, another female writer, Annis Boudinot Stockton, summed it up best after the Battle of Bunker Hill in summer 1775. Thousands of heroes from his dust shall rise. Who still shall freedom's injured cause maintain and show the lawless king the rights of men? The founding fathers may have signed the documents, but the founding mothers helped shape the character of the nation those documents created. And that's a story worth remembering, too.
In every episode, we'll share some books, TV or movies, etc., for your viewing pleasure and give props to those that give this subject its due.
Some books we referenced while researching this subject, aside from the ones already mentioned. There's books like John Adams by David McCullough, Founding Brothers by Joseph Ellis, The Intimate Lives of the Founding Fathers by Thomas Fleming, Benjamin Franklin by Walter Isaacson, Alexander Hamilton by Ron Chernow.
I even snuck into my library's juvenile section for research. Two books of interest are by Cokie Roberts, Ladies of Liberty and Founding Mothers, the Women Who Raised Our Nation. For those who prefer to watch their history instead, always remember that some facts in these programs are dramatized or heavily fictionalized. Some of my favorites are that movie National Treasure, starring Nicolas Cage. Many founding fathers things like Silence Do Good, the Federalist Papers, and the original glasses crafted by Ben Franklin. Yeah, it's fiction, but it's enjoyable for all ages.
So good. 1776 is a film and musical. And as we all know, Hamilton is a more recent Broadway musical. And for our lovers of Disney World, The American Adventure in Epcot tells the story of America featuring animatronic figures and changing sets and characters rising through the floor. Highly recommended when you need some AC and a dose of history.
Now it's time for today's love letters. George Washington, you are a man of duty. Regardless of what your teeth were made of, thank you for choosing liberty over a crown. He said, "We ought not to look back unless it is to derive useful lessons from past errors.
Beautiful. And next we have Thomas Jefferson, a true man of vision. Thank you for helping to negotiate the Louisiana Purchase so that our country could be greater and more secure and become known for all that good food and fun festivities.
Laissez les bon temps rouler. Then we have Benjamin Franklin, my man of curiosity. Thank you for your interest in science, which led to new inventions to make our lives easier. Also, because of you, perhaps less people sit in windows, which is good since you created bifocals.
Tips to that. John and Abigail Adams, partnership goals. Thank you for working so closely together and using your bond in support of the greater good of the people.
Alexander Hamilton, now he was a man of ambition. Thank you for your financial acumen to rescue a bankrupt nation. Perhaps we could really use that intelligence now.
Right? Can somebody summon him? A seance, perhaps? Thomas Paine, a man of conviction. Thank you for your courageous writings, which helped muster the colonists' confidence to attain their goals of independence. Remember, these were definitely the times that, quote unquote, tried men's souls.
And finally, to our founding mothers, thank you for using your intellect to encourage social change during a time when many did not have a voice, and for supporting our boys at battle. Thank you for using your pen to demand the protection of our civil liberties under a new government and the bravery to stand side by side in the trenches with those men to help achieve those aims of freedom.
Let's not forget Dolly's husband, President James Madison, reminding us that if men were angels, no government would be necessary.
So true, oh wise one.
Indeed. The founding fathers were far from perfect, but perfection was never the point. They argued, disagreed, stumbled, and sometimes failed. Basically, a trial and error process started our nation.
Yet together, these infamous men help create a nation that continues to evolve 250 years later. Their legacy isn't that they were flawless, it's that they believed ordinary people could govern themselves. And that idea changed the world. Remember the quote from Patrick Henry, give me liberty or give me death? Let's remember it on America's birthday instead of worrying about T Swizzle's wedding.
Amen. Thank you for listening to our first episode of Love Letters to History.
Whoop whoop, where history is the past.
And the past is our present to you. Until next time, when we discuss the first ladies of America,
Cheers!
This has been Love Letters to History with Emily and Liz. Have a question, a favorite historical figure, or an episode idea? We'd love to hear from you. Email us at loveletterstohistory@yahoo.com. Also, follow us on social media for behind-the-scenes stories and upcoming episodes. Until next time, history is the past, and the past is our present to you. Cheers! We draw the lines of history, scenes to the stories that last forever. Love letters to history. We remember eternally.